Doo-doo. Okay, it's finally live. Hey, welcome back to the Syndicate, guys. I'm your host, Matt Ward. If this is your first episode, shame on you. I'm angel investor, serial entrepreneur, startup advisor. But this show isn't about me. This show is about awesome guests that I get on. I get the best investors, entrepreneurs, and mentor accelerator leaders in the world. Today, we've got Andrew Ackerman from Dreamit, one of the top accelerators worldwide at this point. I think you guys have gone platinum.
Okay, if you say so.
That's what the rankings seem to say. Thanks for coming today, Andrew.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, when you said you get the best in the world, I'm like, well, why am I here? But okay.
That's okay. Everybody kind of says that, but everybody also could use a little bit of an ego pat on the back. Okay. You guys have been doing pretty well. So I know what you're doing now, managing director of Dreamit, but what's your background? How'd you get into this?
Oh, man, my background only makes sense given what I'm doing now. I'm kind of ruined for any other job. So I got started, I went to Chicago Booth. Well, actually, before it was called Chicago Booth, just Chicago Graduate School of Business, University of Chicago. After that, you leave a program like that in the 90s, there's two doors. There's the investment banking door and there's the consulting door. So I went with door number 2. I did that for 4 years at a company called Booz Allen, which then became Booz & Co. and then became called Strategy and, worst name ever. Then I left. It was about late 1999. I went back to New York as the startup boom was beginning and it wasn't happening in Chicago. I did my first startup, a company called Bunk One. I exited in 2008, right before the world came to a close. Then I spent 3 years at a family office dealing with a rich individual whose entire portfolio was on fire throughout 2009 and occasionally doing some direct investments, early stage stuff, as well as some big, boring private equity and hedge fund stuff. I left that at the end of 3 years. I was going to do a third startup, but then the opportunity to join Dreamit arose. I jumped on it.
Okay, so I looked into your background, Layer Cake. What is that? And is
So
Daniel
that was
Craig
my second. No, it has nothing to do with that. So we used to get like Layer Cake, the movie, and there was a wine called Layer Cake. So it makes sense given what I did before. My first startup, Bunk One, had to deal with summer camps, and a large portion of what summer camps were looking to provide their families with were a safe, password-protected venue where they could look at their children's photos while in summer camp, which back in early 2000s was actually pretty hard to do. So when I went back into the space, the whole idea of what digital memories were, not just photos, but also like audio clips, written clips, just like handwritten notes, and how we curate and store these memories was very top of my mind. So the idea behind Layer Cake was to make it dead simple for people to actually organize all these memories. And the example I like to give, and now I'm about to live this, is my oldest daughter is 11 and change. She's gonna be bat mitzvah in less than a year. We have thousands upon thousands of photos to go through for that one little montage. And I'm just putting off going through them because they've all just been junked into a folder somewhere. The idea behind Layer Cake was to make it very easy to curate and surface the ones that you really want to see over and over again. I had founded it. I was brought in to be the CEO by the founder who was also funding it. I launched the product. He ultimately said, I think I can take it from here. I said, with respect, I don't think you can. But at that point, I wasn't going to fight him, so he bought me out. And then the fact that you have not heard of Layer Cake since tells you what happened with that one.
I see. So you guys were pretty early, sort of social media?
No, it wasn't early for social media. Like Facebook was good, but we were about the same time.
What year was it?
So Layer Cake was in 2012.
Oh, I thought you said 2000. I was like, that was pretty damn early for social media. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, so Layer Cake was about the same time when there were a lot of different photo apps coming out. Not Instagram type photo apps, but photo apps around like how do you organize all these digital memories.
So you go from being operator to being investor. How do you get pulled into a family office?
Under false pretenses. No. So the truth is, I had a good friend who was in this role before, and he said, "Listen, it's a relatively small family office, so they want one professional who can handle both private equity and hedge fund style investing, and also help incubate some of the principals' ideas. And some of them were actually reasonably good ideas for someone who had never started a business before. So I said, that's interesting. I could do the hedge fund stuff because it's whatever, it's not crazy complicated. I won't really enjoy it, but the ability to go from someone who started one company to someone who had basically a little bit of a venture studio where you could rapidly test an idea, and if it looks good, stand it up with a full team and launch it and fund it, that was pretty attractive. So I said yes to that opportunity. Then the financial crisis hit in late 2008. So I spent the entire year of 2009 dealing with, private equity funds calling capital and hedge funds putting up gates so you couldn't redeem it. So none of that happened for a full year. And then starting in my second and third year, we'd start pitching some of the ideas that he had come up with, and developing them into idea to business. And at the end of the day, he just didn't pull the trigger. It wasn't kind of in his DNA. It wasn't something he knew how to do. So I left. That's how I ended up going from one side of the fence to the other.
It makes sense. It all kind of ties together to what you're doing today. I have one more question on this. Let's just say, in the manner of not disclosing anything, what does a small, medium, and large size family office look like for people that don't have an idea?
Yeah, sure. So, so first I'll say what a family office is, because some people may not know. So when you have generated enough wealth that it's difficult for you to figure out how to invest it on your own, you'll start hiring a team of people who can find good investment opportunities, vet them, and present them to you. And to this gentleman's credit, he was quite good on the private equity and the hedge fund investment side for many, many years. Like back in an era when a lot of people could just go to a fund of funds and say, okay, here's a good chunk of my money, you figure out who to put it in. He was going all down 6th Avenue from emerging manager to emerging manager, and deciding who he wanted to place bets with, and actively managing himself. So he was kind of ahead of the curve that way. I'll give him credit for that. But to answer your question, to make it worthwhile, to actually have somebody on staff full time to do it, you're probably talking on the order of magnitude of $50 to $100 million worth of investable assets. So, not including your house, not including your yacht, not including your other 2 houses, and maybe the island in the Caribbean that you own, like actual liquid money that you might want to put into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, hedge funds, private equity, or venture.
Okay. So like 100 million is like the small side of a family office for people that are curious.
I know it seems strange to call $50 million small, but in this context, it is.
It is all completely relative. You're building big stuff now. How did you get pulled into Dreamit? Was that another one of those bait and switches?
No. Dreamit actually worked out perfectly, right? So I was about to do my 3rd startup. And somewhere along the way, after my exit from Bunk One, I was doing angel investing on the side. And like, whether it's blackjack or angel investing, if you win at your first hand or two, you're kind of hooked. So I had a couple of really good investments early on with actually a good friend of mine from Chicago, Booth. So I was really into it. And I'd gotten to the point where, having been exited as an entrepreneur and also being on the smaller side of an angel investor, but relatively active, I started getting a lot of startups coming to me for advice, which was fantastic. I loved it. Like, I could sit in a Starbucks all day and just meet with startups. I could be happy as a shit. But, I'd be hyper caffeinated and bouncing off walls. So I was doing, I just can't. So anyway, I was doing that quite a bit, alongside with my regular job, and then alongside trying to get my new startup going. And I had mentored some startups before, both at Dreamit and at ERA, another well-regarded accelerator program in New York. And there's a lot going on. At the same time, I was writing for Alley Watch, which was a publication that was then New York focused, but now deals with a lot of different startup areas. And the initial founding editor-in-chief had asked me to write for that. So I was, I don't want to write the same stuff that everyone else is writing. What wasn't anyone writing at this time? And it turned out that while there were profiles of venture capital funds, nobody was profiling angel investors. Right? AngelList was just getting started, and nobody was like writing about what an active angel like John Asen in the New York community is interested in. So I said, hey, I know a lot of angels. I'll do interviews. I'll put together quick profiles, about once a month. So I interviewed a lot of people. And one of the guys was a gentleman by the name of Mark Walken, who was running what was then Dreamit New York. And along the way, I had heard that Dreamit was looking for somebody else to take over the New York office. So immediately I emailed Mark, hey, Mark, is this good for Mark or is this bad for Mark? And he's like, oh, no, this is awesome for Mark. Like, I was told that this was a part-time job, and it's anything but. It's like full-time between finding great startups and dealing with logistics and actually mentoring them. It's like a job and a half. So I'm hoping that we bring somebody in who'll run it all. I'll still work with startups, but I just want someone else to manage the whole office. So I said, so let me get this straight, Mark. You still want to do the fun stuff, but you want someone else to do everything else. And he goes, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm like, okay, I'm in. And here's the funny part. The funny part is I'm about 3/4 of the way through the process. They were flying me down to Austin to meet with some of the companies that were going through that office. And my wife says, I really hope your friend Elliot is pulling for you. Now, I had totally forgotten that this guy I went to college with and high school, Elliot Menchik, who was the founder of Dreamit Health. Right? I had totally forgotten about it. I hadn't even told him that I was in the running to run the Dreamit New York office. So I then, I called up Elliot. I go, Elliot, I put my hat in the ring for the position. He goes, yeah, I know. I'm already pulling for you. So that's how I got involved with Dreamit.
It's a small world.
Yeah, and it gets smaller. The more deep you get into venture, it gets smaller and smaller.
What's the world like in New York?
What miles different than it was when I first did my startup, right? So when I first went in and did Bunk One in early 2000, right, and I was the third guy on. There was no angel list, right? Nobody like that. So if you wanted to find angels, it was really who you knew and friends of friends. And everything was difficult. There was no GitHub, right? So you were building everything from scratch. Right? Things that would take you like half a week to kind of cobble together would take you a month and a half to build. Right? And the talent was super hard to get because there were very few people who knew what's this cool HTML stuff people are talking about. So it was really hard to get a team together. And we would end up pitching like VCs with business plans. Like, how old does that sound, right? An actual business plan.
Mm-hmm.
So like all that is radically different. Now it's much more active. It's much more organized in a intrinsic sort of way. It's not like a top-down, somebody decide, I'm going to make sense of the system. Bottoms up, user-generated organization with different meetups and different newsletters, all emerging. It's just so much richer now and so much easier to connect with like-minded entrepreneurs, with active angels, also some BS angels, but that comes with the territory. It's just become a much more vibrant, interesting, and easy to access scene than ever it was before.
You've worked with a lot of startups. What have you learned?
How many days do you have?
A couple.
So I'll tell you, there's a quote from a book that I hated, but it has the best first line ever. So it's called, it's a book by Tolstoy called Anna Karenina. It's about 1,400 pages. Don't read it. Like the other 1,399 pages are no good. But the first line is, every happy family is the same. Every unhappy family is different and it is unhappy in its own way. So what I've learned about startups is that almost every successful startup is successful because they've managed to do all the key things right. Every startup that has flamed out for different reasons. And sometimes like different, very dramatic difference, reasons. There are a couple of broad categories of screw-ups that kill startups, but every day I come across new ways a startup can fail.
How's your thesis changed as an investor then?
That's a really good question. So both personally and for Dreamit, it's changed over time. So first of all, I come to this, my background was a product guy in the B2C space largely. or the B2B2C space, but it was very consumer focused. Now the majority of the companies we look at are B2B. What's more, Dreamit used to be a pre-seed focused accelerator, and now we're post-seed focused. That's number two. And number three, I originally came to this with the focus of I'm an angel investor, and now I'm part of a VC fund, which is very different. So let me kind of break these things down one after the other. So the first two are related, right? So why B2C transitioning to B2B, and why actually they're all related, so I'll just answer them all at once. So the traditional accelerator model, what you think of when you think of an accelerator, 3 months plus or minus, 2, 3, or 4 founders per team sit their butts in chairs for those 3 months. You'll bring them speakers, you bring them pizza, you bring them beer. At the end of the program, demo day, pitch your heart out, try to raise $1 million or $2 million from angel investors, right? And for that privilege, you'll get 50 or 100 grand plus or minus for 6, 8, 10% of your company. Right? That is the archetypical accelerator experience, right? That experience was very much a product of Techstars and Dreamit. So the first 3 accelerators in the modern sense were Y Combinator, Techstars, and Dreamit. Y Combinator always had kind of their own thing. It's kind of a lighter touch. They have over 100 companies per batch now. But the heavy, like we're going to get very knuckles dirty, we're going to work with 10 or 12 companies at a time and do what I just talked about, that was something that was pioneered by Dreamit and Techstars. We don't do it quite that way anymore. So we still deal with very small batches of companies, still 8 to 10 companies, maybe even 6 to 10 companies. But what we found is we wanted to work with later stage startups. And the reason had to do with the customers, right? Every accelerator that's in the top 5 or top 10 is known for something. Like Y Combinator is known for an awesome funding network. Techstars is known for having these kind of single corporate sponsored accelerators, like the Barclays FinTech Accelerator powered by Techstars. 500 Startups has a great reputation for growth hacking for B2C companies, right? And I can go on for a few of the lists. What's interesting is once you get below the top 10, the brand is not very clearly defined for the other 2,000 accelerators out there. You get like, oh, it's a good program, right? Or you get like 20 different ideas. But for the top 5 or 10, they're each known for something. And in Dreamit's case, we were known for our customer introductions, or for lack of a better word, for business development. People would come to us, we would get them their first pilots. But it was actually brutally hard to do, right? So we'd have 12 companies in 12 different industries. So I'd have to do it 12 different shots. And even though the corporations would say, we want cutting edge, earliest stage startups, they didn't really. Like they would say, well, they want one stage later. So they would say, those guys are super sharp, right? Great problem that's solved. It's really painful for me. Solution is very clever, but they're just a little too early to work with corporate. I'm going to track them for 6 months to a year. Like as a former entrepreneur, I want to put my head through the wall every time I hear that. But that's the name of the game. You just keep on kissing frogs, and after 9 frogs, hopefully you find a prince. So that's what we were doing, and we were doing it times 12 for 12 different industries. But at the same time, we had later stage startups come in and say, we love what you're doing, we love your customer network, but I got $1 million in the bank, so I don't need another $50,000. And by the way, even if I wanted to, my board wouldn't let me give you 8%. What can you do for me? And our answer was, I could talk to your board, but like that wasn't a winning strategy. And we had this kind of very interesting offsite at one point where we were talking about this phenomenon, and somebody said, I'm sure I don't remember who said, would you take this deal? And nobody at Dreamit would take the deal. Now we're edge cases, right? I mean, we're all super connected, serial entrepreneurs. We've all done startups, usually more than one startup, very often including at least one failure, right? So we're not the typical guy that would go into an accelerator, but we wanted those kind of really strong founders. So if the offer wasn't appealing to us, why would it be appealing to them? And at about this time, we'd also We were most of the way through our second fund. We're on our third fund now. And we come to the realization that if this $50,000 for 8% is preventing us from connecting the corporations who want these later stage startups, and the later stage startups who want into the program to be with those corporations, if the deal is getting in the way, let's change the deal, right? So we changed it, and it seems blindingly obvious in retrospect. But remember, we were all angel investors originally. So if you're an angel investor and you put $50,000 in this pre-seed stage, and you get 100x return, that's $5 million. Like, great, I'm going to go duplex my apartment. I'm going to buy a boat. If you're a VC fund, even a small VC fund, only $25 million, say, and you get a $5 million return, no one cares. It's like, great, get me 4 more, and then we return the fund and we start making money. So we had to make that mental adjustment from being an angel to a VC, and then we realized that we didn't need that. So that goes to one of the changes that's happened over the years. In my own approach, I've learned to think more like a VC. So we don't take any money up front. We don't give any money up front. We don't take any equity. Instead, we get the right to invest in their next round, which is typically an A round, at a 20% discount.
Like a warrant.
Yeah, it's called an investor rights agreement. But it works. I mean, you could make it a warrant. You could do it a lot of different ways. And the beauty of that now is we've gone from asking for something that the really good post-seed startups don't want to give, right? Only the bad ones that are circling the drain will take another 50 grand for 8%. We've gone from something where the deal got in the way to something where that's exactly what they want. They're like, I know it's not a guarantee, but you're saying that you'll come in, you'll fill the last 10% of my round in my A round, and you're going to introduce me to all these leads, investor leads, customer leads. Great, we're in. So that's how we've evolved over time. And as a natural outgrowth of that, we've also started going more vertically oriented. Right? So instead of being generalists, now we work with urban tech companies and digital health. We were working with EdTech, but that's on hiatus right now because I was running that as well. And we're going to roll out new verticals. So that makes the biz dev work better. So now we have stage appropriate, corporate ready companies. So that's really who they want to talk to. And we do it frequently enough that every 6 months we're coming back to them with 3 or 4 or 5 really good potential partners for them. So those things have evolved. And I'll wrap it up and then I'll shut up and get to the rest. Next question is the natural outgrowth of all that is a shift from B2C to B2B. If you're really good at making these corporate introductions, then the kind of companies that can benefit from them are either the ones that are selling directly to them or the ones that use them as a channel partnership, like a rev share agreement to sell or those kind of things, which means that we end up skewing very heavily B2B. Occasionally still B2C, but only when working with a great architecture firm or a great real estate developer helps put them in front of their end customer.
Because B2B is generally a better business model. Yeah, you did. How do you pick the verticals?
Okay, so that's actually a great question. So digital health we got into at the end of 2012, early 2013. Like I told you, my friend Elliot was the one that had started it. That I wasn't there when he started it, but my impression was it was a fortuitous coincidence, right? He had been an MD, PhD. He had started his first company. He'd come out. He knew health very well. He started it. It turned out that we got in at exactly the right moment. It had just started on the investment activity had just started on this big upswing. Dreamit's actually the second most active investor in digital health in North America as a result. So we ended up getting on that train at exactly the right time. I wish I could remember who told me this. It was a VC, and he said, "You know what the difference is between being too early and wrong?" Not a rhetorical question. Yeah, not a damn thing. You don't get any prizes for being too early. You've lost the money equally well. So, we managed to come in at just the right time on it. Now with UrbanTech, there's a different genesis story. So there's a gentleman by the name of Jeff Vinnick. He lives down in Tampa. Before he moved to Tampa, he ran Magellan, which is part of the Vanguard family of mutual funds, one of the largest, if not the largest mutual fund in the world. He did phenomenally well. ran a hedge fund, also did very well. He bought part of the Boston Red Sox. He owns the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? That kind of level of success. Lives in Tampa now, is a big believer in Tampa. And there's a lot to go. Tampa has a lot to say for itself. It's, in his mind, it is a great value stock. So he's down there, and he has invested alongside Cascade Investments, which is Bill Gates' investment arm. But Jeff Innick is the active force in this. He has invested $3 billion in renovating downtown Tampa.
Jesus.
Right, and it's 53 acres, 9 million square feet of new construction. It is the second largest renovation project in North America after Hudson Yards here in New York. Right, and it's the largest privately funded program probably in the world, certainly in North America. He was looking to build the local ecosystem. The same way he was looking to rebuild the physical ecosystem, he wanted to build the local tech ecosystem. And he happened to connect with one of our EdTech alumni who's from Florida. And his name is Barani. So Barani said to the effect of, listen, if you want to build a world-class tech ecosystem, there's really only 5 or 6 accelerators in the world who can help you do that. And 3 of them don't leave the valley, right? So, I can introduce you to Dreamit. I'm sure someone else can introduce you to Techstars. And he did. And we spoke with Jeff many, many months before he ultimately selected Dreamit. So it's interesting. So in parallel with actually hiring a very interesting woman out of 1871, Chicago's kind of co-working accelerator space, to help build from the ground up, he brought Dreamit in to help bring in really talented startups and investors into the ecosystem from the outside to kind of cross-pollinate. Now, the interesting part is we didn't commit to doing UrbanTech at first, right? We figured, okay, maybe we do health, maybe we do EdTech, we'll figure it out. It didn't really matter. But the more we learned about what he was building down there, right? And remember, we think of it from the customers we can introduce the startups to forward. Like, well, if you're putting $3 billion to work, you're going to have the best GCs like Skanska and Suffolk or Coastal Construction. You're going to have the best architecture, like architect companies like Gensler and Fox. You're going to have the best realtors. You're going to have the best property managers, right? Well, that's already a cadre of customers we can introduce these startups to. So we started digging into what we consider urban tech, construction, real estate tech, parts of smart city that don't involve selling to government, like water, transportation, energy. And when we kind of resliced the numbers for those things into what we now call urban tech, we found that the early stage investment activity in this urban tech thing that we kind of cobbled together was within 1 percentage point of where health was in 2012. So we're like, wow, we have all these customers in Tampa, and we can get tons of them in New York, obviously, in real estate. In Philly, we're also co-headquartered. And we're actually at the exact same stage in this industry's development as health. Right? This is incredible. This is like the ultimate fortuitous coincidence. And when we pitched it to Jeff, he's like, absolutely, that's great. I'd love to bring great startups like this to Tampa. It's accretive to what he's trying to build physically as well. So that's how we ended up with UrbanTech.
So let's make it a hard question. You get to kill one of the verticals. What do you pick for the 20-year returns?
Oh, between health and...
Between everything you're doing or any opportunities you could have to add.
Sure. Well, I can actually tell you which vertical is taking a back seat right now. Right. So we also had an EdTech vertical, which I span up in 2016. So when the opportunity down in Tampa came up, this was kind of a big opportunity for Dreamit. And rather than bring in somebody new, and there's always a little bit of a chance on who you bring in, regardless of how good they are, they asked, it was a choice. Either they asked me to step in and spin up UrbanTech, or they asked Steve, who was running health at the time, to put health on hold to spin up UrbanTech. So the decision we ultimately made was that we put EdTech on hold in order to launch UrbanTech. And the reasons for, quite frankly, is I'm still a believer in EdTech. I think There's quite a bit there. I think they're also on the verge of major transformations. But when it comes right down to it, it was a smaller market. It was at a different stage in its development. And just the opportunity wasn't as big as both health and urban tech. So I hope that we relaunch it in the near future, but I can't do two things at once.
Makes sense. I'm going to give you one more bullet.
Sure.
Which one? You get one choice: urban tech or health tech. Not just for you guys personally, but
I'm going to punt. I run urban tech, so I certainly hope it's health tech, because otherwise I'm out of a job.
Okay. So urban tech will be the winner then.
Yeah, but that's I'm biased, right?
Yeah, it's okay. We're all a little bit biased. You ask people whatever they're interested in, whatever they're researching. That's the next thing that's happening. That's the next big trend. What are you excited about besides the stuff you're working on? Just outside of Dreamit in general, what gets you excited?
Oh, well, the next season of Fauda. Are you watching?
Next season of what?
It's a show on Netflix. It's Fauda, F-A-U-D-A. It's this really cool cat and mouse series between terrorists and the Israeli counter-terrorist units. It's just fascinating. It's addictive.
Interesting.
But I don't know if that was what you were asking about.
Well, that's exciting as well. Everyone likes a good terrorist.
And The Walking Dead, that's starting up soon too.
I managed to escape that. They're still running that?
Yeah.
Okay, that brings up an interesting question. For startups that you're working with, how do you know, or how do you advise startups when to launch new products, when to scale versus when to keep going with what's working?
Sure. So that's a great question. So it is brutally hard to make one thing work. So I don't usually tell them to try to do two things. Certainly not the earliest stages, right? Anytime I come across a startup at the seed or A round, they're like, oh, we have these two products. I'm like, no, you don't. You have 0 products. You got to get one to actually work. And usually you can tell which one gets the appropriate traction, and you should put all your bet on that one. Then the question becomes, if you're a later stage, you're at a B round company, right? So let me actually explain why I think it's B round. So when you're a seed round company, you're proving product market fit. You're really just showing that, hey, what I've built, they're actually willing to pay for. You only need a few customers for that. For an A round, you need to prove that you're actually getting a sales funnel that works. Like, it's not just me being a great salesperson. I can build a sales team. I can repeat it. I know here are the 6 stages of the sale. I know I get 10% drop off here, 7% here, 13% here. Bottom of the funnel, 1 in every 8 companies or 8 prospects will convert. But I understand those metrics. I've gone from somehow I managed to get sales, so I have a machine. And it's not optimized, but it's good enough and it works. So I'm raising my B round to hire more people and repeat it and then fine tune that engine, right? So once you're at the stage where you can rinse and repeat a little bit, right? I'm going to bring in a really seasoned SVP of sales, and he's going to build out a 10-person sales team and then a 50-person sales team in my C round. Once you're at that point, you as the founder have the mental bandwidth, maybe, to start thinking about other related products, right? Or other related, features, products is kind of a gray line between it. It may not be the right answer. The right answer might be to just keep on blowing that out. Like if you're an Uber or a Lyft or a Plated or a Blue Apron, where you kind of a city-by-city model, then really you shouldn't be doing new products. You should be rolling out new cities, right? 1 city, 2 cities, 6 cities, 12 cities, right? That's your model. But if you're national to begin with, and maybe the answer is your expansion down to other product verticals, adjacent verticals.
I think the city-by-city model can actually be quite dangerous because people assume there's international or national network effects, and there really aren't. You don't care.
Yeah,
so
I would actually go the other way around, right? So a lot of, if you're like a Blue Apron or an Uber, there's very little economies of scale across different geographies, but it becomes a land grab. There's usually room for 2 or 3 competitors in any one city, and then everyone else, it's just the consumer, especially if it's consumer facing, doesn't have the mental bandwidth to remember more than 2 or 3. Plus, if there are economies of scale within that city, right? Once you've sucked up a good portion of the market, it's very difficult for a fourth, company to come in. So if you have that kind of model where you've proven it out in one city, then you proved it out at a different city just to prove that wasn't a fluke, you then want to start raising and just plant your flag in as many cities as possible, because imitators are starting to come up, right? And you want to get there before your imitators seizes, the high ground in those cities. So you'll try to get the best cities in the U.S., and you'll lose a couple of cities in the second tier to competitors in the U.S. And very often, by the time you're ready to go international, someone else, like the Rocket Internet Brothers, has already stolen Europe, right, or Brazil. But yeah, in that case, I would say you focus on franchising in the cities. That should be your entire focus as a founder, not other products.
See, but franchising is different than expanding, how both of those companies
I use that word in single quotes. What I mean is, I don't mean going out there and actually giving away the economics.
I think that's a better model. I think Blue Apron and Uber are both in trouble.
So do we have another half hour to talk about that?
We can if you want to.
No, I'm going to pass on it. I'm just going to say what I mean by it is, once you've proven it out in 2 or 3 geographies that are different enough that you know what works and what doesn't work, or where what you do works and where it doesn't work, then you should be saying, okay, I know that these 20 cities are good targets for me. I know exactly how to make those 20 cities go. I need to find the people who are going to make that city go, the city managers for each one of them, give them the money so they can build teams and get them going. I'm actually biased to owning it myself for anything that's even reasonably complex. If it's very simple, then the McDonald's model works even better. But
okay,
that'll be a stand-in for another 20-minute conversation about.
Yeah, we'll agree to disagree. I've ripped apart both of their business models. I think they both are very flawed, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep, and it's going to cost you liquor.
Yeah, I'm a coffee guy, but I don't mind buying you liquor.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the lightning round. How's that sound?
Sure.
What's the first investment you did?
The first one was actually atypical. It was a company called Avid RP. So it was a radiopharmaceutical. And what it did was this compound, which you would take before getting a PAC scan, or before getting an MRI. Mm-hmm. You would take it and it would bind with amyloid plaques if you had any in your brain. Amyloid plaques are correlated with the progression of Alzheimer's. So we don't know if it causes it or if they're just a byproduct. But the more you have, the more Alzheimer's you have. And there was no direct way to figure out if somebody had Alzheimer's at that point in time. You would give people cognitive tests. It could just be a bad day. It could be dementia instead of Alzheimer's. So what that meant was you could not be certain that the person that was in a drug trial for an Alzheimer's drug actually had Alzheimer's. Or bigger picture, you're 50 years old, you can't remember where your keys are. Did you just lose your keys, or is that a real problem? So the big image, the big end of pot of gold again, the rainbow, was it becomes like the same way you get a prostate exam when you're 50, you would get one of these exams every 10 years just to make sure that you aren't at risk. And if it was the beginning of risk, you could start taking future medications prophylactically to push off. Ultimately it was sold to Eli Lilly. It was a very good exit. Once I got my money, I stopped tracking it though. So I don't know where they are.
I've heard there's correlations between Alzheimer's and some type of yeast growth in the brain.
The yeast growth I don't know anything about. Amyloid plaques is what I know. Okay. Again, it was atypical for me. My friend from Chicago, Booth, brought it in, and I said, "That seems really big. What do I know? Sure, I'm in." And then I got hooked because it was a good
worked out well. Two biggest hits to date?
In Dreamit? Well, let's answer
it. Personal, yeah. Go for
it. Avid was pretty good. That's probably one of my number one hits as an angel investor. In Dreamit, from my very, very first cohort that I ever ran, there's a company called Head Out. They like to call themselves Hotels Tonight, but for activities. in a given city. You show up in a city, you open it up. These are all things you can do within the next 48 hours. They've raised a B round already. I think they're in 10 or 15 cities, and I knew them when. Right? They were fantastic entrepreneurs. It's just been a pleasure to see them grow. They came in 2014, so they're one of my favorites.
What about anti-portfolio? We always like the strikeouts.
Oh, okay, man, that's a lot. There's one that's the fish that got away. There was a company also in that portfolio. They were almost closed with their round before demo day, back when we did demo day. They were a social play. They were around living location tagged reminders, either for yourself. Like, I get out of the subway, my phone will remind me, moron, you have to go get milk, right? Oh, and I just passed, the grocery store. Because I always would end up like, oh, I need more light bulbs. I'd walk past a hardware store 20 times without remembering. Mm-hmm. Or for other people, like your wife could do it for you, or even just purely social, right? I had the best margarita at this club, and then when your buddies come by there, it pops up. So it was really good, and they were getting great traction. But and this is public. This is not nothing hidden here. The founder was very young. He had been in an MD PhD program. He ultimately did not pursue the MD, but when he was asked about the MD in due diligence, because it was still on his LinkedIn portfolio, rather than, as you and I would simply say, "But that's on my LinkedIn portfolio. Oh, I should have taken it down. I don't really use LinkedIn. That's ancient history. I didn't actually do it." He said, "Oh yeah, that's coming along nicely." And the moment anything is not 100% true, mm-hmm. It all goes downhill. So that round fell apart, and the company fell apart. And I still think it would have been the next Snapchat.
Damn. Well, hopefully something a little bit nicer.
But there's a happy ending. After a couple of years in the wilderness, he got back on the horse, and he's got another startup in the health space, and it's doing very well from what I heard. So happy endings.
Oh, I sent you flowers. So well, I have two more questions. And then,
oh, sorry, just 1 second. Somebody's knocking.
This is real. Everything is happening live. We're not censoring anything. Let's have some fun.
Sorry about that. I'm actually getting the 2-minute warning on the room.
No worries. It's okay. It's time to go. We're in the red zone. Okay. Cool. So what are you scared of?
What am I scared of? That's a very good question. Thinking like a VC, I know certain companies, I just know a certain percentage of my portfolio is not going to succeed. So I'm not scared of taking that kind of risk. I mean, I guess for my own personal future, I just need to know that enough of the companies that we back are going to succeed and succeed big. So that 5, 6, 7 years down the road, the fund does really well, and I do personally really well. So in a way, what scares me is that the decisions I make now, I don't know if they're good decisions for a lot of years, which means that for someone who wants to learn from their mistakes or successes, it's a very long lag time. Like, I could be making horrible mistakes right now, and I don't know for another 8 years. But God, I hope not.
Uncertainty makes it a much larger multiplier than risk, though. One last question. Someone calls today and says, hey, we want you to take the CEO job. Who do you say yes to?
Oh.
Assuming, of course, that your employer is not listening to this and they'd be totally cool with it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I wouldn't take, well, it depends. If it's a reasonably successful startup and they're doing great, like, I'd want to know why. Like, the only real good answer to that question, the best answer is, like, we love this guy, but he was just hit by a truck. Not for him. That's a horrible answer for him. Mm-hmm. But in terms of, like, the opportunity being great, that's the only way I would take the reins of a startup. Either that or, like, the founder was like, I've got it to this point. I know I can't do it beyond that. I want you. In terms of a large company, probably wouldn't take the CEO role. Chief Innovation Officer, I might take a role like that. But it would have to be the kind of company that really kind of gets it. Uh, I know the guy who is in this role at the company I'm about to mention. He's not going anywhere. I don't think I'm in the running for it, so don't read anything into it. But one example of a company that I think does it very well is Samsung.
Okay.
Right? So a company that's got, that has good high-level buy-in and has put a process together, and the processes that they have are actually quite good. So those are the only ones that are kind of tempting.
Those are both pretty interesting. And I know you need to go save startups from themselves. So where's the best place for people to find you online?
Me online? Very simple. Andrew@dreamit.com. That's my email address. If you email me, be concise, because I answer short emails a lot faster than I answer long emails. You could also find me on LinkedIn, but please reach out to me first before you just blindly link to me, because I keep my LinkedIn network restricted to people I actually know who I can ask for introductions. And if you're vaguely curious about what I write about, I have everything that I write about, I republish on my blog as angelsseeit.com.
Awesome. We will throw links and all of that great stuff into the show notes. Thanks for coming on today, Andrew.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
And thanks for tuning in, guys. The syndicate.vc. You know what to do. Cheers.
Bye.
Awesome.